Ah, technology.
Yeah. Okay. Well, hey, we are live. This is Kevin Van Dorn with KetoMojoGogo, and I've got Tom Clark, a big rock star rising up in the carnivore world. He's the head of the group of Autistic Carnivores, and what's it, the Fasting Project is another one that you've got.
Yeah, the ketogenic fasting project. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're doing a lot of cool things there. You've actually had some recent interactions with Dr. Sean Baker, it looks like, which was very cool. I mean, congratulations on getting a little bit of recognition there.
Yeah, he's the first carnivore I actually ever met, and so he's probably the best known. So that was kind of two birds with one stone.
Yeah. So anyway, we wanted to get together and talk a little about. We've been talking over the last, I'd say, a couple of weeks to a month about. In my case, I've started 3 keto groups. First one that we started was my wife and I. We started seeing the amazing success we had in our weight loss. So we started the KetoMojoGogo group. Then I kind of backed into and realized that all of a sudden my autoimmune diseases were improving, and started doing some research around and found out that this is a common thing. Autoimmune symptoms seem to disappear or get better or even go into remission from doing a ketogenic lifestyle, and even a carnivore if you go all the way there, which surprised me. And even further, how we even discovered or found out about keto in the first place was we watched The Magic Pill, watching that little girl get profoundly better with her epilepsy from doing a low carb, high fat diet. And as it turns out, I have 2 grandkids that have autism, and I would love for them to get the benefit of that. So I just kind of floated out there on Twitter and said, hey, what kind of support would I get? Who would be interested in supporting a keto for autism group? And I think we're up to about 50 members now within a couple of weeks. And Dr. Tro jumped on board. Dr. Jay Wrigley jumped on board almost right away. And so I was like, well, okay. And I had a lady from the UK who treats autistic people using a low carb, high fat diet, and she jumped on as a resource. So pretty amazing start. And then you and I started talking. So that's kind of how we landed where we are. And that's only been since August of 2018, by the way. So
nice, very nice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, when I started Autistic Carnivores, well, I started doing videos for YouTube, and they were little slideshows. I would read books because I got started the beginning of 2017 with reading Why We Get Fat by Gary Taubes. And I was amazed at the progress I made, because my biggest problem at the time was arthritis. Like I just couldn't move anymore. And I used to be a gym rat. So I gave up the gym. I could barely get to work. I hurt so bad. So I was so amazed at the turnaround. I started doing these little book reports and putting them on YouTube, because my friends are like, yeah, you should put videos on YouTube. But I didn't want to be on camera. A lot of people, with autism are kind of reclusive and stuff like that. So it was a long time. It was just recently I made my first video that I appeared in, probably in the last 2 or 3 weeks or whatever. But I've gotten bolder and bolder. I have a lot less social anxiety now, so I worry a lot less about being on camera or being outspoken or whatever. In fact, nobody could believe that I actually went to a sporting event when I decided to go to the rowing competition where Baker was rowing. They're like, you're going to a sporting event by choice, But then I got to meet him. He was, standing around waiting for whatever afterward. And I was like, well, he's right there. I better go up and talk to him, which is pretty unlike me to do stuff like that. So this whole low carb environment's been a game changer. My arthritis is almost completely reversed on keto in like a month, maybe 5 weeks. I went from having mornings where I couldn't turn a doorknob to having no pain at all in my joints, basically. So I figured I still have psoriasis. So the psoriasis kind of kept coming and going. And that's, in the same way that, you were saying that your autoimmune diseases responded to keto. I was starting to find out that some people who still had autoimmune diseases on keto were going to carnivore and getting that final result that they needed. And it was kind of around that time I was like, God, I don't know about eating meat all the time. It sounds so dangerous, and you expect everybody to just tell you you're insane or whatever, and then I saw that was right about the time that Baker was on Joe Rogan's show. And I was like, oh, look, there's a doctor giving me permission to eat meat. So it was like perfect timing, Yeah. And I just discovered some of the groups on Facebook, like zeroing in on health. I think it was the first one, and then Carnivore Principia, and then World Carnivore Tribe. I think when I joined World Carnivore Tribe, it was like 500 people or something, and now it's like 25,000 or something. It's like crazy.
You're like a founding member, yeah, and that's just launched like crazy, right? I just recently joined that group myself, so, and that's a little bit that's a Wild West group too, buddy.
Yeah, well, you want a Wild West group, join 100% Carnivore and Beyond. That's Phil Escott's group. That's a wild bunch over there. But I love Phil. Phil's got a great personality, man. If you see him in an interview, he's very laid back and easygoing, and that group's a little on the raunchy side sometimes, but it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. I'm a member of a couple of other carnivore / keto groups, and it's funny because it's like they're no swearsies. And it's fun. It's just because, I guess the others are already taken, so they want to be more family friendly, I guess, in that respect. But and they're more support groups, right? Whereas like World Carnivore Tribe and Phil Escott's, they're more just kind of on the edge. Whereas these are more, people that are just trying to lose weight or get healthy, and they don't really want the noise of everything else and vegan bashing and everything else, which that has its place. That's what Twitter is for.
Yeah, the other wild west.
Yeah, but I say everything has its place in that way. But and talking about that trend also. So you probably saw this last weekend. We did the Adapt Tampa event with Dr. Eric Westman, right? And so Danny Vega was there, a couple other people. And one of the things that Dr. Westman said, I don't know if you're noticing this or not, but there's an awful big move towards carnivory within the keto movement. And he seemed to be all for it too, which is kind of interesting. Because if you read some of his earlier stuff, you would see that he says, you have to eat your vegetables every day. And, maybe not so much anymore. And then you look at Dr. Barry, same thing, right? If you look at his 2017 videos, he was all more of the traditional keto where you had to eat your 7 helpings of vegetables every day, until now he's gone carnivore. So it definitely seems to be the trend, even in the medical field, that, fiber just ain't all that.
Right. Right. Yeah. So it's kind of you see a little progression in some of the things, because you read the early books, even by like Maria Emmerich and some of the other authors, and they talk about gluconeogenesis was always the devil in the background, man. Don't overdo that protein, or you're going to spike your glucose. But I have my own theory about that. One, I think that as far as fiber, I think people's colons actually shrink, and then they don't need that extra volume, right? I think. And then when it comes to gluconeogenesis, I think the thing that happens is when you take people off of a high carbohydrate diet, their bodies are used to high glucose, right? So you feed them a little extra protein, and their liver will kick up the glucose back closer to the levels that their body is used to. But if you take somebody who's used to a low blood sugar level, that gluconeogenesis is more indicative of a healthy response and less of a deranged metabolism.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, those are just my theories. I'm no expert, but I talk to a lot of people online, and I've been through probably 50 different books, everything from the vegetarian books and How Not to Die and the China study and everything, plus all the discussions I do with people online and stuff. And I think that's what's going on. I think people are just, did you hear that alert?
No.
No. Okay. Yeah, I thought I got everything under control so we wouldn't interrupt. But anyways, yeah, I think that's what's going on. People are realizing things like fiber aren't necessary. And I think the next domino to fall is the micronutrient thing. They study all these plants and find all these micronutrients in them, and they assume, well, it's a good thing, so you got to eat it. But it's not necessary when you're on a meat diet, particularly a fresh meat diet, where you're eating, not just preserved meats, but, fresh ruminants, as they say.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I'm sure Dr. Baker's about to fall over from scurvy any minute now.
Yeah, I can tell you he's a pretty solid individual.
Indeed he is. My brother and I were talking about this tonight because he was asking about, well, what about, scurvy? I'm like, well, you have to think about the time that they were looking at that, what these guys these sailors were eating. They were eating hardtack, right? Pretty much bread. That's all they ate. And so they were pretty malnourished all the way around and probably weren't getting the meat, let alone fruit. So no meat, no fruit, but they went ahead and gave the credit to not eating fruit.
Right. Well, and you can read some of the accounts from some of the explorers and stuff like that, or even if you find out that these guys that went whaling and exploring, they dropped goats off on these islands so that they'd get fresh meat when they came back, because they knew that fresh meat prevented scurvy. But when they're on these long expeditions, they run out of fresh meat, then they eat the preserved meat, and they run out of that. And hopefully there's some citrus left in the cases where they actually had access to things like limes or lemons or whatever, and they would put the juice in their drinks. And these guys typically drank a lot of like beer and ale and stuff like that. So not necessarily the best diet, like you said, they're eating basically hard biscuits, right? So they've got a glucose rich environment. And those are also the first people that were eating things like hydrogenated vegetable oils, because they were the first stable fats that they could take on long voyages. So those guys were probably exposed to a lot of the very first bad processed foods.
Pioneers in omega-6.
That's right. Pioneers in omega-6. So I think that's the thing. We don't have any good studies really on people that just eat meat, other than the anecdotal evidence of all the different indigenous peoples that lived in areas where there really wasn't any vegetation to eat.
Right. The next book on my list is The Art and Science of the Low Carbohydrate Diet by Dr.
Bullock.
Bullock. That's the next one on my list. Right now I'm reading Jason Fung's Obesity Code. But but my brother's reading. He went ahead and took it from me since I'm not reading that one right now. And the first thing he talked about was the scientists that went up and lived with the Inuit and ate their diet, and then they tested them and showed how well they did, and they just pretty much ignored the science. It didn't fit into their narrative, and so hey, gosh, things changed, right? But now we've got social media, we've got living examples. We have looks like maybe millions of N equals 1 now. Right. To add up, and so it's getting harder and harder to ignore. What a week we've had too, by the way, in the low carb, high fat world. First of all, we had, was it Kraft last week, that their stock tanked, and a bunch of processed foods, because what they said was people are getting less inclined to eat processed food all of a sudden.
Imagine that.
Yeah, the vegetarians took credit for it, but I think we know better. The second one is, I think it was Chick-fil-A and a couple of restaurants. More restaurants are now offering more keto options. So that was the second thing that came out. And then yesterday, I think it was, Weight Watchers tanked, and CNN's headline was that Weight Watchers is getting crushed by keto.
Uh-oh.
So something's changing.
Jenny Craig can't be far behind.
Oh yeah, they're already there. I think South Beach, which is already kind of low carbish anyway, now has a keto option. Slimming World came out with they fought back today. They said no, it's just a fad, and we're just worried about calories. But that's what they have to do, right? Because
sure,
to do otherwise would be admitting defeat, and they can't do that. And I don't blame them, right? They've got to protect their bottom line, and
sure.
And I'm going to go out and say that it is possible to lose weight on a low-fat diet. It really is.
Sure.
It's just not possible to sustain it.
Right. Well, and I mean, like any diet, even in a world where, let's say, keto or carnivore was the best diet, you're still going to have a few people that can't do it for some reason, and
right.
they're going to need something. And if you figure that people can go on keto and be on it long enough to really know what the problem is, and they go try something else, they might wind up at Weight Watchers or Jenny Craig or something, and they might do okay there because of the people that already have some practice at sticking to something, So they might get the spinoff, right?
Yeah, and that's fine. But the thing is it's so much more effortless to do a low carb diet, right?
I think so.
Look at the number of people. Matter of fact, I'm obviously not alone here. My wife and I did every freaking type of diet there possibly was, right?
Right.
Including vegetarianism, including running 25 miles a week while being vegetarian. We did all the Weight Watchers. We did. We became black belts in Taekwondo.
Wow.
And continued to stay obese.
Right.
We would lose weight for a little while, and then obviously when you're working out really hard, your appetite begins to increase over time, right? And
absolutely. That was one of my biggest problems.
Man, so you gain the weight back again and more every single time. So right now, we up until last month, I was doing 3 times a week some high intensity interval training.
Right.
But I got busier in the last month. I've been working more and traveling more, so I haven't been able to, but I'm still losing weight. So
outstanding.
The thing is I think it's I can't remember who said it, but was that you just can't outrun a bad diet, right?
Absolutely.
You just can't do it. So diet has to come first, and then you exercise to get more tone, to feel better in your brain. Yeah. But it's not, if you're trying to lose weight with exercise, it's definitely not going to do you any favors.
What autoimmune diseases were you tangling with?
I have ankylosing spondylitis, rheumatoid arthritis, and the psoriasis arthritis.
Yeah, the ankylosing spondylitis is one of the things that Baker brought up in one of his videos. He's like, as an orthopedic surgeon, he was taught that was a disease that people just don't recover from. It just progressively gets worse.
Right.
Of course, I'd say the same thing about type 2 diabetes,
You're right. You're absolutely right. And in my case, I had a problem with it undiagnosed until I was 35, and I'm 52 now. So 17 years.
Yeah.
It was progressing.
Right.
And now all of a sudden, I was on Humira and on methotrexate.
Yeah.
I'm not on either anymore. Matter of fact, I'm on nothing now.
Absolutely great.
And you may have seen me, but I post it every once in a while when somebody says, it doesn't work, and I'll say, really? Here's my doctor telling me I'm in remission and saying that it's due to diet.
Right.
And it shuts them up every time because, here I've got it. I've got, that is the gold standard of saying here, and it even says on there, patient was on Humira, methotrexate, and is no longer on any drugs.
Nice.
So, there's no better evidence than what I have right there. Just like, here, take that, motherfucker.
Yeah, I was in some psoriasis groups and stuff like that, and I tell people, man, you don't understand. I mean, I had arthritis really bad. My psoriasis is getting better, and they're like, there is no cure. They hear that all the time. Why aren't you on methotrexate? It's going to infiltrate your joints and there'll be no coming back. And I'm like,
right.
I've come way back. Let me tell you, you know.
Yeah, I know. And you know what? I do get where they're coming from, man, because, you know, it's just like anything else. It can be a hidden thing. You don't know the progression. But I'm going to keep getting x-rays every 6 months, right? I mean, that's part of my responsibility in this. And in the fact that I keep making sure that it's not going to progress any further and I'm not noticing it. And I'm all for that.
Yeah.
I think that's fine. I think everybody should do that.
There's no harm in a little bit of proof. I mean, and
Mhm.
you want to keep an eye on it because you never know, right?
Right. I mean, it's insidious, man. It's, you know, while I was running those 20, 25 miles a week, it was getting worse and worse and worse until, you know, I would run one day, couldn't get out of bed the next day.
Yep.
Type scenario, or next 2 days, but I still have to go to work. So you do what you can, you walk with a cane, you do whatever you can, then you start getting a little better, then you go run again, and then, you know, it's a vicious cycle, but you're trying really hard to get in shape. You know, it was that committed to it, right?
Yeah, I know. I was working. My goal was to break 500 on the bench press, and I'd wake up in the morning and I couldn't open my hands.
Oh,
It was so bad. You know, I wake up and my hands would be clenched like this, and I couldn't straighten my fingers out, and so I had to give up the heavy lifting, and then it just kept getting worse. I got so heavy when I was working out that the treadmills would stop on me all the time. So I'm working out at the gym, I'm lifting weights, I'm doing cardio, I'm on the diet you're supposed to be on. You know, I could have been a quinoa salesman. I ate an apple every day because I thought it would keep the doctor away, but all that sugar was just driving my arthritis, and it was just getting worse and worse and worse. And like I said, and even after I stopped working out, I woke up one day and I could not grab the doorknob to get out of my bedroom, and I was like, "What the hell am I going to do?" You know?
Yeah,
So,
that's bad. So,
and I used to bleed through my clothes all the time. I'd take a shower, put on clothes, just head out to work, and my girlfriend would be like, "Better come back. We're gonna have to find some clean clothes," because you know, I'd towel off or something and rip open a lesion, and I'd just be oozing right through my clothes. You know.
yeah. So, but that's gotten better for the most part.
Yeah. I don't have a problem like that, but hasn't quite gone away, and I have a flare up. I know I can't take any sort of NSAIDs. You know, it seems like any kind of like naproxen or Tylenol or anything like that just drives it crazy. I'm actually on the PKD diet right now, hoping that they'll do. I realized I was screwing that up because I didn't realize you're not supposed to eat any eggs on that. But there's a new Outliers podcast, Human Performance Outliers podcast with Sophia Clemens. I think it's still behind the paywall on Patreon, but it should be public pretty soon. And I was listening to that, and there was a couple of points she made, and I was like, oh, I haven't quite been doing that right. But I think the PKD thing is working for me, which is basically just a carnivore. They call it a paleo ketogenic diet because they thought they called it a carnivore diet with brains and liver, that it would scare everybody away. But it's basically keto because it's very high fat. And actually, I kind of backed off on the fat as more an experiment in getting leaner. So I'm not eating quite the recommended amount of fat, and I was eating some eggs on and off, but I've gotten rid of the eggs, and I basically eat brains and liver with my steak every day. It's what I'm doing, and it seems to be working. So I have some pretty large lesions, like on my right thigh, that they've healed up. You know, they're big, round, you know, rashy looking things that actually have quite a bit of healthy, clear skin inside of them now. So they're going away. And I've got I don't know if you can see this on the camera, but like I've got the typical stuff on the elbows, you know, stuff like that. So
my psoriasis was never bad. It was mostly my hands. I would get it really bad in my hands.
I get it. I get it right here all the time.
Yeah. But that's, you know, that's gone. That's a beautiful thing that I don't have that issue any longer. So that was great. And I'm also hearing that, you know, there's maybe a leaky gut relationship with psoriasis as well, right? And so by going
Yeah.
carnivore, that gives your time for your gut to heal, of course.
Yeah, they that's one of the things about the Paleomanacia, the clinic in the hospital in Hungary, is they test for that leaky gut. They use a test. It's called it's like the PK400 or PC300 test, where they have the patients drink a glycol solution, and if you have a porous intestine or increased gut permeability, it will actually show up in your urine faster, and they can determine how leaky the gut is with that test. And that's one of the things about eliminating certain foods that prevent the tight junctions between the cells that are supposed to regulate the food particles going into the bloodstream. And that's one of the things you said. Yeah, you don't want to eat eggs until that's healed. You don't want to eat it. There's a whole list of things you don't want to eat. So they basically,
dairy would be another one of those things, right?
Dairy. Mm-hmm. Yeah, particularly dairy. She said that it's the milk proteins, particularly casein,
right,
is one of the ones that tends to prevent those tight junctions from closing up. So,
well, I mean, I think that's great. I think that's you're healing, and that's good to hear, because using food as medicine is what we're all about here. And the thing is, at least the protocol that I'm following, which is pretty much the Dr. Eric Westman protocol, he never has emphasized fat. And, because there's people you do keto for different reasons, right? If you have epilepsy, if you have traumatic brain disorder or injury, you're going to need the fat for the ketones. But if your goal is to burn fat, you obviously want to not eat a ridiculous amount of fat, because you want to burn your fat. You're going to be a fat burning machine either way.
Right.
But the thing is, and so what we do is I just eat kind of fatty meat and vegetables, if I eat, or just fatty meat. And when I say fatty, it's like 80-20 hamburger, 75-20 25 hamburger,
right,
ribeye, New York strip, things like that, ground lamb. So I'm not like necessarily trying to eat a lot of fat. It's just eating fattier choices of meat, a chuck roast, things of that nature. And I'm still eating dairy because I can tolerate it.
Mm-hmm.
So I can eat some cheese and have some heavy whipping cream in my coffee, and butter. But if there were a problem, if I were to not be reaching my goals, those are things I can target, right? I can go ahead and start checking things off. All right, well, let's take the heavy whipping cream away. Let's take the butter away.
Right.
But as of right now, I'm making good progress. I still have about 35 until my ultimate goal. But I'm still 5 pounds a month. That's great. I'm fine with that. I'm replacing it with muscle, and energy's there. So I have no complaint about what I'm doing right now, but I'm ready to make an adjustment as needed.
Yeah, well, that's the way to approach it, right? I mean, a certain number of people are just going to go low carb, and they're going to lose the weight they want. They're going to feel awesome, and that's the end of it. And then the next step is probably going keto, right? It's like, okay, a little more managed. You're a little more macronutrient focused. And that's going to take care of a lot more people. They're going to meet their goals right there. And then I think, obviously people who have obvious autoimmune diseases are probably the ones that are more likely to do really well on something that's even more restrictive, like a carnivore diet. Them and, athletes, particularly athletes that are really muscle dependent, are going to probably really do well on carnivore. So.
Yeah, again, most of the people I'm working with right now are pretty metabolically damaged, right? They're type 2 diabetics, these type of things, and not necessarily the athlete. And so just getting them to a level where they can just get on a stable diet and normal thing of eating meat and vegetables, and just do that.
Yeah.
And make it sustainable for you. If once in a while you need that keto dessert or whatever, fine, do it.
Yeah.
But I'm just kind of my evolution. I did it at first, but then I started craving that stuff less and less. And now it's pretty much meat and an occasional vegetable. I think, who was it said it's there for flavor and decoration. So that's kind of how that works. And that's extremely sustainable for people. I can't believe how many people are thanking us. They say, you saved my life. I can't, how many times I've heard that from people. It's like, and I said, look, you have to make these, you have to listen, right? You are the one that have to make these decisions. I can't force you to not eat whatever you want to eat. You have to come to your line in the sand where you're going to make your decision and say, I'm not doing this anymore. What is that point that you say, I've made the decision? Is it because I want to be here for my kids, my grandkids? In my case, when I was told, okay, now you're going on insulin, that was like, okay, that's it. I'm doing something. So everybody has to determine what that thing is and then make that turn from there. And then, like I've told people with an autoimmune disease that say, I could never give up my cake. I'm like, well, to me, that sounds to me like you're not hurting bad enough yet.
Right.
I mean, I'm not trying to be mean, but it's the thing is like, if you can't adjust your relationship with food, and that's not as important to you as you're getting rid of your pain, maybe you should reevaluate your relationship with food.
Right.
Either they catch on or they get mad at you.
Right.
But that's kind of how it goes. And like you, I kind of I don't like go out evangelize in like the ankylosing spondylitis group, but I do watch for people that will just come out and say, has anybody been able to correct their issue with diet? Right. Well, as a matter of fact, here's a picture of my in remission. And when I do that, I'll get 10 or 15 people coming over. And it's a good group. They don't seem to mind, that kind of information. And I always say, look, I'm not making any claims. This doesn't work for everybody. But it does for a lot. And so if there's nothing else, I mean, even if it doesn't help your autoimmune disease, it can still reverse your type 2 diabetes.
It
can still,
that's kind of the low hanging fruit, right?
Right. So that you're still going to lose a few pounds. You're still not going to be taking in these damaged omega-6 oils that are definitely adding on to your problem, right? Sure. So maybe if you get it just down to just base autoimmune, if you're born with that gene and you're going to have it no matter what, well, let's clean up your diet, and you don't have to go vegan to do it. It's much easier to sustain. And so we get a ton of people coming over as a result of that. So
I think that's the thing is, I like to get the message out as much as the next person. And it's really about looking for the people that are ready to hear the message. There's so many people in the world. There's enough people, like you said, that are hurting enough that they're looking for something to try. They're not willing to just keep eating their cake and taking their medicine, or some people are just sick of spending money on medicine. They're like, they think, well, maybe there's some way, even when it comes to autoimmune, it's not necessarily going to always be caused by leaky gut. It's just leaky gut's a really common cause of autoimmune diseases. It could be something else. You could have a fungal infection or something that causes it. That's entirely possible. But I noticed like my immune system must be much better because I was always catching, the common cold, seasonal flu and stuff like that. And I've been sick once in 3 years now. I got a sore throat a couple of years ago. So somewhere between getting on keto and being on a carnivore, and like everybody around me gets sick. Family I live with gets sick. My coworkers get sick, and for whatever reason, I'm not catching it. So I think, well, even if maybe I had leaky gut, maybe it's mostly repaired itself now, and that's not the issue. And maybe I do have, some other. I know some people it's fillings in their teeth, and stuff like that. They get a little infection in their mouth or something they're not aware of, and that drive autoimmune or other issues. And if my immune system is getting stronger and stronger, maybe it will resolve something like that, even if it's not all related to leaky gut. So,
right. Well, like I said, I mean, eating those inflammatory foods don't help no matter the cause.
sure.
I mean, you're just
Yeah.
piling on, right?
Right.
And I can remember, when I got diagnosed, my doc, they run all these blood tests, right, and say, oh, hey, in my case, I had parvo at some time, right?
Really?
And my daughter, she also has ankylosing spondylitis. She got diagnosed at 12.
Wow.
And yeah, she's much worse off than I am. That's why I want her to like pay more attention. If you can hear me, Jocelyn.
Yeah.
I really want her to get better. And in her case, they said, well, hey, you got bit by a tick that had Lyme disease. Maybe those caused it, or maybe those are just things that they throw out there because they don't know, right?
Yeah.
And that's fine. But like I said, even if there's underlying causes that are not dietary, there's still good reason to not exacerbate the problem by keep eating inflammatory foods.
Yeah.
And
Sure.
so that's kind of where I land on that. It just seems to make total sense to me. And besides, the food's delicious.
Yeah.
I
Well,
mean,
and I think when people get on it long enough, they really feel better. Their mood really improves,
mm-hmm,
and then they adjust to the food. And they look forward. In my case, they look forward to eating steak every time.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Once you get to that level, it's easy because
Right.
when I go to the grocery store, I'm not buying a bunch of condiments and
No.
this and that and the other thing. So I know what I want, I know what I like, and I go get it. And I don't spend money on medication, just like you don't have to anymore.
Yeah, that's one of the things I posted right away is like, hey, here's I have this heavily used pill container. Anybody want to buy it?
Yeah. Well,
And
I was cleaning out my cupboard and I found this in there. I don't need this anymore. I used to buy these giant boxes of Alka-Seltzer because I had heartburn all the time.
yeah, Gerd man.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, my wife was the same way. I mean, she could never stomach Alka-Seltzer, but because that's
Only
nasty.
as tough people can do it.
That's nasty.
Nobody else likes it either. That's why it was always safe because it didn't matter how bad anybody else felt, they couldn't handle Alka-Seltzer. I thought it was God's gift to mankind.
But she was on every other antacid pill. She was, and come to find out that stuff's making it worse too, right? It's just
I'll tell you a quick story. That's what killed my mother.
Oh man.
My mom had cancer for 25 years, and we thought that was going to do her in. But she had GERD. She would aspirate stomach content in her sleep, and that gave her asthma. And the doctor put her on the proton inhibitors, to cut down on the GERD and the acid reflux. And then when you get on those, you find out when you read the label, you're like 20 times more likely to get pneumonia. So now you've got a person, older person with cancer. She's got asthma from the GERD, which I didn't know that was one of the side effects, but apparently it is. And then you put them on these, acid inhibitors, and then they get pneumonia. Well, the pneumonia killed her.
Wow.
And I mean, it killed her in like 48 hours. She went from doing well and recovering to like, I'm having a little trouble breathing to gone.
Wow.
And I guarantee you, if she didn't have the asthma and she wasn't taking the acid blockers, she probably would still be alive today.
Right.
So
Yeah,
there you have it.
And that's the other thing too, and it's one thing that drives, motivates me, because I've seen, my own family members die young.
Sure.
And knowing what we know now,
Right.
if they had gotten that message, maybe
Right.
they'd still be here. And it really is frustrating to me because we watched a generation die from dietary guidelines.
Sure.
I just can't. I get choked up thinking about it. That my oldest brother, that, granted, he's a smoker. Okay, that's on him. That's on him. But he ended up dying of stomach cancer, type 2 diabetes, this whole thing, and that may have been completely avoidable.
Sure.
And his wife died, his wife died 20 years earlier, and who knows, right? She was so thin that she was probably a tofu, right? Mm-hmm. She was probably thin on the outside, fat on the inside, because she ate, pizza and everything else. So she could, she's one of those people that like, wow, she could eat as much as she wants and never gain an ounce. Now we know why. She did not have the ability to get obese.
Right.
And so obesity, we talk bad about it, but actually it protects us. Sure. It protects us from ourselves for a while, sure, as long as it can, until it can't anymore. Right.
Right.
But yeah, so I mean, I've lost several family members, probably even my own mom, her own heart condition and everything else as a result of this, because she was a damn good cook. But and we all, and she did the Weight Watchers, she did the Jenny Craig, she did all these years.
So did my mom.
And to what,
Well, and when my mom was alive, I'd never heard of the Warburg effect, right? Which, a lot of cancer cells could not metabolize ketones, right? They require the fermentation of sugar, and you deprive them of sugar, and a lot of the cancer cells don't thrive anymore. Some of them even poison themselves because without the ability to ferment sugar, they can't produce glucagon to counteract the oxidative stress that their metabolism generates, their non-aerobic metabolism. And my grandmother died of Alzheimer's, right? Oh. Another disease that could have, and she had developed quite a sweet tooth at the end. So, but back when that happened, I had never even heard of low carb. So,
well, no, none of us had, right? And that's that's kind of just how it was. Oh, that reminds me, you mentioned Alzheimer's. You mentioned gluconeogenesis a while back. Have you read Amy Berger's To It Nutrition's articles on GNG yet?
I have not. I've watched many of her lectures. I have not read her book. I usually wait for
She's got a blog post on GNG, everything you want to know about protein, which is it just basically body slams the argument on eating too much protein. If you haven't, go to our blog, you can find it. I
think I have that link. I read the title of that in the last week or so, but I haven't actually read the article yet.
I keep it in my bookmarks, so when I see somebody on Facebook tell me I shouldn't eat too much protein, I say, because it just kills it. It kills the whole thing. But also, as you know, she wrote the Alzheimer's Antidote, that book, which
right.
And I think I just bought it, by the way, on Kindle.
That's on my list. Yeah, I'm dyslexic, so I try and get everything in audio form I can first, and then when I run out of audio or video, then I hit the texts.
Right. Yeah, you should be able. Have you tried even like the blog post? Have you tried like doing a text to audio on those too? You should be able to.
I do sometimes. They don't work as well as you'd like sometimes. In fact, it took me forever to get through Fat of the Land from Wilhelmner Stephenson, the famous Eskimo guy. So I actually got Adobe Reader to read an old PDF of that, but it was pretty painful. It took a while.
Yeah, and plus I think Amy writes in sarcasm, so that might be interesting trying to pick that up. Hey kiddos.
yeah. But she's quite the character. I love seeing her videos. So.
Yeah, she's really picked it back up, and she's old school. She's old school low carb, right? And so I'm glad to see that crowd coming back up, picking it up, taking the lead now.
The Emmerichs are starting to show up now. Marie Emmerich and her husband. I forget her husband's name. Wasn't even familiar with them, but they started popping up. They were going to get deleted from Wikipedia. Because they weren't judged relevant anymore, and I think that kind of like sort of because they're doing their own thing. I think they live in Wisconsin or something like that, and they're marathon runners and stuff. So I think they're alive and well in their own culture, but they weren't real prevalent in social media. So
Mm.
We're starting to hear from them, you know.
Tom Naughton's not in Wikipedia anymore.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the Fathead movie is, but he's not, which is interesting. You know, it mentions his name, but if you click the link, it says it doesn't exist. So he doesn't.
I'm always telling people to watch that movie. I tell them, you know, watch Super Size Me, and then watch Fathead along with it. You know, they're good companions because
Mhm.
it's a good example of how people need to be kept honest. You know,
Right.
Spurlock would never release his actual meal plan. We never actually knew what the guy ate. But I'll tell anybody what I eat because all I've eaten for over a year now is anywhere from a pound to probably 4 pounds of meat. Was my biggest day, and that's after a lot of working out. You know, my appetite goes up and down. I'm not one of those stable appetite people, unfortunately. So
I can see that. Yeah. So I'm not working out hard, so I have trouble eating as much as a pound of meat a day. It's more than I can consume, and that's because I'm not burning the energy that you are at this point. So, and that makes perfect sense.
I can't even keep up with my theoretical. If you calculate what I'm burning on paper, it's well over 4,000 calories a day without even really working out that much. I can't come anywhere near close to eating that much, and I think that's part of the problem. And I eat sometimes 3 times a day, usually at least twice a day. And it's about all I could do to get like a pound in it each sitting, maybe a pound and a quarter.
Right. Wow.
So
yeah, there's no way I could do that. Matter of fact, today I met one of my colleagues for lunch at it was a Colombian restaurant over in Orlando, and I had some roast pork. And it's a decent sized portion. It wasn't that big. I couldn't eat half of it. I mean, and it's just my leptin bam kicks in. I'm like, that's enough. And so I eat twice a day. It's I eat maybe half to 3/4 a pound a sitting, sometimes a half a pound. It's just, that's the thing. I just eat until I'm full, and that keeps me losing weight. But I'm not like trying to restrict calories. I never do that now. In fact, as I tell my own groups, if you are feeling deprived, you're doing it wrong.
sure, yeah. I actually just shifted to leaner meats, and I'm actually able to eat more, which surprised me. But I think for whatever reason, the fat satiety gets triggered in me faster than the protein satiety. So I think I just was under eating protein. So I've been shifting to leaner meats, and they're going down a little better. So
yeah. Speaking of using 4,000 calories a day, my gosh, that's a lot. But from what I read recently, that if you're on a low carb diet, you automatically burn at rest 500 calories a day more than a person that's on a high carb diet. So I mean, it makes the calculations hard, right? Because your metabolism is different than you are used to.
Right.
And that's not
just try and calculate your lean body mass, and it's more of an art than anything if you're not average, because I'm still over 300 pounds, but I got a lot of muscle on me now. So I've always had a lot of muscle on me. I've got a lot more muscle on me now. So it's like, how do you figure that out? And even I'm still not eating enough to be, ideally, if you just want to lose some body fat, you maybe want to be slightly below your caloric, what you're burning in a day, right? And I'm not even close. So, what are you going to do? Because I'm lucky to get in 2,200 calories, and I'm burning 4,200, let's say. So it doesn't, you can't pencil everything out and make sense of it.
I don't think it's possible, and I don't even know that it's necessary. It just depends on what your goals are, right? I mean,
sure.
The thing is your goal to continue losing fat and losing weight, or are you just happy where you're at and because you're so muscular?
I'm definitely, me personally, I'm definitely want to be leaner, but right. I've kind of made a shift. I was watching an interview with Dr. Lyon, and she's saying that she kind of treats patients as though they're under muscled instead of looking at them like they have too much body fat. And she drove a point home that I'd heard, but the light didn't go on about. She figures out the blood volume of her patients, and then she figures out how much protein they need to get their leucine values up high enough that their body is readily making muscle. And me, I kind of come from an engineering job. I'm a data-driven kind of guy. So when I was like, oh, I could calculate my blood volume and then figure out how much leucine I need in that blood volume by how much protein I'm going to eat, I got very excited. I was like, that's starting to make sense. And then it went right along with me eating leaner cuts of meat and getting more protein. Because protein is not a very efficient source of calories.
Right.
Because part of that protein is being siphoned off to build muscle or rebuild muscle. And it's about 30% less efficient when it's converted from food to energy. Right. So fat and carbohydrates readily convert to energy, but protein doesn't. You have that thermogenic effect that absorbs the energy.
Well, and that's the point that Amy makes in that is the fact that, for one thing, it's on demand. It doesn't just automatically turn into a chocolate cake because you overate protein.
Right.
There's a process. It's, it'll just kind of hold on to it for a bit until it needs it. And then even to your point there, only 40% of it actually gets converted to glucose. The other doesn't, because it's got to, like you say, build muscle, connective tissue, work on your eyes, work on your joints, all of these things, the jobs that protein has, it's quite busy. So, no,
and your body's going to be making glucose anyways, especially if you're on you eat, like you said, vegetables, but you're not getting much glucose out of those vegetables, I bet. So your body's probably going to convert some of the protein into glucose, right?
Well, it's got to, right? Because I'm trying, I only need 5 grams of sugar in my blood at one time. Well, if I, so basically a little bit of extra protein, and I guarantee you, I'm not even overeating protein because I can only eat a little over a pound a day. That's just me.
Yeah.
So I'm on. So the other thing I heard the other day was like, if you're fasting, you're on a high fat diet.
Absolutely. And what's the longest you've ever fasted?
I've 24 hours. I don't really actually ever try to fast. It's just more of, I eat when I'm hungry. And so typically, just by the way it happens, I usually eat at 1 o'clock in the afternoon and then like 6 or 7 at night. And that's it.
Yeah.
But I've definitely gone days when we went for an 8-mile hike. I would purposely say, well, let's try this today. We'll take some sardines with us in case, but let's go ahead and just push through and see how long we go. And we felt fantastic, right, during the whole hike. And so it ended up being almost 24 hours before we actually ate. It was like, well, are you hungry? I guess we could eat, And so that was kind of how we approach it. Is like, well, I don't believe in breakfast o'clock. I don't want to look at the clock and have it tell me when to eat. But on the other hand, I don't want to stress out about, oh my gosh, I'm fasting, I can't eat. Next thing you know, you pushed your cortisol up and you're raising your insulin because you're being an idiot and trying to do something that is not natural to me. And especially for people that are just starting out on keto, because I see this in a lot of these other keto groups. It's like, oh, well, you need to intermittent fast. You need to fast for 2 days. Oh, you cheated. You need to. And I'm like, whoa. Here you've got people that are already trying to change their lifestyle and they've failed. They've failed or they're not adapted. And now you're giving them an extra layer of failure. Please stop that.
Yeah.
So
you don't want to try and do too many things at once. That's for sure.
No, definitely not. And
even a guy like me who loves to experiment, I was like, well, am I going to confound my results because I'm doing too many things at once?
Yeah, too many variables, and that's cool. Yeah. So Tom, I say let's go ahead and wrap this up, and because it's getting late for me. But so where can people find your information? Where can they find you and your blog and your Facebook groups, etc.?
The closest thing I have to a blog is carnivoreinfo.com. And it's basically just a repository where I put links for studies and videos and Facebook groups, just so people on the internet anywhere can find some resources. And on Facebook, you'll find me at Autistic Carnivores, and also have the Ketogenic Fasting Project, which is my older group. So those are the main ones. I've got another one called Carnivores Beating Autoimmune Disease that I formed, but I haven't really propagated it yet, so it's just kind of hanging there.
Well, that's good, man. That's good. So, all right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and call it a night. Again, my stuff is, KetoMojoGogo is, .com is my webpage, and then lots of Facebook groups, the YouTube page, KetoMojoGogo also. And, the whole reason we did it was for our own accountability. So we've tried and failed at so many things.
Yeah.
Something we put out there, and, so far this little thing is working out all right. It's working pretty good. So,
well, it was a pleasure talking to you, and I look forward to doing this again with you.
All right, and this should be posted as soon as I'm done broadcasting, sir.
Excellent.
All right. Well, you have a great evening, and we'll chat very soon.
You too. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.